All right. How's it going, man?
It's going, man. It's MLK Day, so
Uh-huh.
we're
Enjoying the day off?
yeah, enjoying the day off. Gonna do a few things I think this afternoon, and you know,
All right.
do some shoveling maybe.
Yeah, I got people knocking on my door all day asking to shovel my driveway. I just ignore them.
Yeah,
I can handle it myself when I get to
yeah,
it. All right. You ready to rock and roll?
yeah, man.
All right, okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the next episode of Your Coalition Corner. I am Philip Johnson. I am joined here by head coach Marc Staley. How you doing, sir?
Good, man. Am I the first repeat guy on this show?
You may possibly be.
Yeah, I want to be. I want to have the most appearances on this show. That's one of my goals I have, like for the next 10 years of my life. So you better not let me down.
All right. Well, I mean, like with all the wisdom and all the stuff you give,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could never not have you on the show. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes when I'm doing a broadcast and you put your comments on there, and it's hard not to read it. It's like good insight. So
Yeah.
but I mean, the reason why you have so much knowledge, man, you team is number one in the state. What's up with that, man? What's up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there's different polls out there. Like, there's a sports writer poll and there's the My Hockey polls, and so it's a snapshot in time, and I don't really let the kids look at that stuff too much, and we don't talk about it, and because the goal is to be, number one on March 10th, not January 10th. So it's one game at a time. And I've been coaching long enough to know I've had some teams that were highly ranked before, and we ended up, exiting the first round of sectionals. So it literally means nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice, to have some people out there think that you're a good team, but, every game you gotta show up.
Yeah.
And you can't rest on that. And for the second you start thinking that, there's a second that you lose it. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool, but it's, any team that's sort of ranked anywhere in the top 15 right now in the state could make some serious noise, I think, in their own individual sections and in states. So, and when you're looked at as one of the top teams, sometimes it adds a lot of pressure to the team. There's only one way you can go, right? You can't go higher than that. So that's why I don't make a big deal about it. I mean, if we were 5th or 7th or 9th or 11th or 12th, the goals don't change. The goal doesn't change night to night, period to period. And certainly for, what we're hoping to accomplish, come February. But
so what do you see like that's been successful for your team so far? What is the key to your early success?
Well, I think I think all teams, I mean, in general, when they know their identity, when they know who they are as a team. There's a lot of teams that don't have that. And you can tell, you can watch those teams play. I watch a lot of video, a lot of video. Not just at the high school level, but I watch a lot of college hockey, trying to pick up different things, face-off plays, stretch plays, and then I watch a lot of video from, my son's team and things like that. And you can tell the teams that have an identity and teams that don't. So what does identity mean? Well, it's that the kids have a sort of a system or a way of playing that they identify themselves. Like if we go play a certain high school team, we know, okay, guys, they do this stuff really well. Their work ethic is always like top notch, or they've got a great, power play, or these kids really back check well, or, they're really unselfish with the puck. And you start creating an identity. And so I think that early on, our team picked up our identity pretty quick in terms of how we wanted to play against other teams, and how we wanted teams to feel about us when we were about to play them. And that's when you know that you've got a successful team going. It doesn't matter what the record is. I mean, think about like the teams that Jeremy's, team plays against. These kids already have it in their head before they play Regal's SCTA or Penn's Elite or, whoever they're playing, Whitby, Ontario. I mean, they already know in their head, okay, this is a style of play that these guys are bringing. These guys are big, they're physical, they're, because those teams know what their identity is. So I think that's the number one thing for teams to know their identity. You know, I mean, you can't just have a grouping of different players with skill levels out there just doing their thing, because it just doesn't work that way. You've got to have players that are great scorers that also identify with being great defenders and great back checkers, and kids who are willing to block shots. They got to do that. And so when that's your identity, that we take hits to make plays, that we go down to block shots, that, you know, that we're really good picking sticks up, holding up on draws, that we do a lot of those little things that don't show up on the score sheet. When teams have that sort of identity about them, it's like, this is how we play, right? You put this jersey on, this is how you're expected to play. That's the foundation for having a lot of success. And you can have a locker room of kids that aren't super talented, as long as they all buy into and know what their identity is. They can be really tough to play against.
Yeah.
So.
There was a old saying by an old baseball player. I forgot his name, but it was I'm not sure if it's a popular saying, but he said one time, he said he's a star player, I think, on the Pirates years and years ago. And he said there is piano players and there is piano carriers. And he said, I'm the piano player. So basically, you guys are the ones who carry the piano. You're the ones who do all the heavy work. And I'm just the one who, you know, makes everything look good.
Yeah.
How does that look for a hockey team when there is a piano, quote unquote, player who is not willing to carry the piano?
The team breaks down. You know, I mean, we've seen these teams before, right? My son's been on teams like that before, where you've got 4 or 5 kids that think that they're the piano players. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're not willing to help set up the stage and carry the piano themselves. And you see the outcome of that, right? Those kids will leave the program. I'm too good for this, you know, and then they go there and then they, you know, it doesn't work. So, I mean, and that's the role of coaches sometimes, is to say, this is how we do it here. But more than that, it's the kids in the locker room. You know, when I got kids in my locker room telling other players, like, hey, we don't do that. We don't play that way here. We don't do that here. Like my work is done. And I've heard that a number of times from my captains this year and from others who have said to, you know, some of the kids who are sophomores or juniors who are sort of getting ice time for the first time. You know, they say, hey, we don't do that here. We don't do that at this. We don't take those type of penalties up here, bud. I don't care if you're mad. I don't care if, you know, he hit you from behind and you're mad about it. We don't retaliate. That's not how we do it here. You know, so that's when you know the identity has been found and the culture is good. But yeah, I mean, you need your stars to be willing to do that. The kids have to, when you're doing some conditioning in practice, they've got to be the first ones, you know, and the kids who are scoring the goals have to be willing to block shots and be the best back checkers on the team and be the best in the low zone. And when that happens, it's great. When it's not, and kids think that they're, you know, above what the unit is and above what the team is, you know, you get a player that's going to be burned out in 3 to 4 years, and coaches are going to be tired of coaching them. And there's no prep school coaches that want those kids, and there's no college coaches that want those kids. And then those kids, you know, end up playing men's league talking about how they got screwed over. I mean, I've got 25 years worth of watching this happen. Mm-hmm. So you can see that happen. So I try to steer these kids away from that third rail a little bit, keep them on the tracks. And, you know, so far so good, you know, with the team this year. We've got a long way to go.
Let's talk about like how a player, let's say you are a coach who has a limited amount of talent and you have those piano players on your team, or let's say you have a piano player who can probably, you know, get you a ton of goals, but it's hard to maybe come down on him because you don't have that much talent. How do you manage that? How do you manage that ego, especially when you don't have that much talent and you possibly even need this kid? I mean, it's like your job almost depended on it. Like you want to kind of make him happy, but at the same time, you know, how do you handle it?
So, I mean, there's 2 answers to that. One of them is youth hockey. And the youth hockey answer to that is, what is your goal as a youth hockey coach? Is it to win games? I mean, you're going to lose your job. I mean, you're getting paid a lot of money to do this. So I don't know. So I always take it from the standpoint of like, what's the best thing that I can do right now for this player's development in life? And if it means that you have to sit those kids to prove a point, then you have to do that. You have to do that. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't do that, anything else that you want to put to the team, any other culture you're trying to create, any other identity you're trying to build goes right out the window. It goes right out the window because, you lose two different ways if you do that, if you placate those players. You lose because you're not doing the right thing for that player in terms of his development, and you lose because you lose the rest of your team in terms of the words that you say on the bench. So that's the answer I would say for youth hockey. For professional hockey, when you're making $1 million or $5 million a year to coach a professional hockey team and you're trying to save your job, I don't know, maybe there's a different answer. I've never been in that situation. But yeah, I mean, the goal is I always try to tell those top players, that's great that you can score. That's great that you can be the best player on the ice, but your main goal is to make the other players around you better. That's how I'm going to judge you, right? So, like, how many of these kids on a team that aren't quite as good as you can you get to 10 goals this year because you're going to set them up, right? Because then we're just worlds better as a team if that happens. One kid scores 43 goals and has 9 assists. How much better are we if that kid scores 30 goals and has 35 assists, right? So, and maybe to get that kid to that point in his development, you got to put his butt on the bench, right? Because there's nothing that motivates. Bobby Knight gave the greatest speech ever about what motivates kids, and it's butt meets bench. Bench introduces itself to butt. butt doesn't like the bench, right? Butt sends message to brain, says do things differently. Butt gets removed from bench, and a different outcome happens. But there's not a lot of coaches at the youth level that are willing to do that, right? Because I think they get caught up too much in wins. You can see this. You see youth tournaments all over the place and see 1 or 2 kids carrying, driving the bus, as we say in hockey, and doing the whole thing. And it's, in the end of the day, what are you really doing? Are you a 45-year-old guy driving 6 hours with a bunch of kids so that you can drive home feeling good about winning a youth hockey game? Maybe it's time to take up another, another hobby, because you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything to help these kids with their development. So,
that's kind of like leads me into our next question. Like, what's more important? Is it good players or is it good coaching? I mean,
there's no question the answer to that is good players. There's no question to that. And any coach that'll tell you it's the coaching, should leave coaching as well. It's the players. And I'll tell you why, because you can have a great coach, right? Like, you could bring like John Tortorella down to coach a pretty weak AA team. And he may make them incrementally better, but they're still going to lose to a AA team with a ton of good hockey players. They just are. And on the flip side of that, you could take, a really good team loaded with good hockey players. I mean, 12 of the 15 they've all got gas, right? And you could have a really bad coach on the bench. They're still going to win their share of games just because they're going to get by on the talent. So what you want to avoid is, weak talent and poor coaching. That leads to horrendous results, which we see in probably 75% of youth hockey. And, you want to find, great talent with great coaching, which you see in about 3 to 5% of youth hockey, I think. But there's no question it's the players. We get them for, like my high school kids, I get them for like 4 months, 4.5 months, right? It's like, okay, in 4.5 months, I'm not going to make them skate, 4 miles an hour faster. I'm not going to make their, skill level jump, huge steps. I mean, we can make strides in terms of their skill and their speed and things like that. But a lot of that's done in the other months that they're not with us. It's done in the weight room. It's done in the camps that they go to, the skills sessions that they do. The time that they put in at home shooting pucks and stuff like that. So, but there's no question. I mean, you've got to have the player. You've got to have the ability. And again, maybe the answer is different for different sports too. I think hockey is a very fluid game. And we can have an influence on the game in terms of like our line changes and some adjustments we make in our forecheck and systems play and stuff like that. But like in football, for instance, maybe the coaching has a more, maybe I would answer the question different for different sports where like every, 12 seconds they get to stop for 30 seconds and come up with a brand new play, right? I mean, there's a lot of trickery. There's a lot of, of misdirection and stuff that you can do with football. But with hockey, it's pretty much no. I mean, you got to do your work, and you got to lay the foundation in practice, and you got to have things prepared, and then you got to let your kids go out and do their thing.
Yeah.
So you got to have the players first, for sure.
I was talking to Nate Lestercar a while ago, and he was saying one of the assistant coaches for Aquinas football, varsity football, and he was saying that there's some players on this team, he can see the potential on this team, and just in general, you see potential on the field, and sometimes you want it more than the player does, and there are times where sometimes you just have to wash your hands of a player. Have you ever had that situation where you've seen the potential? Maybe they're not college or a top tier professional player, but maybe they are good enough to be prep school players or whatever, but they just don't want it. How do you handle that when a player just doesn't want it?
Well, I mean, for the kids that end up playing on a high school team, I mean, most of them, or a AAA team or prep, things like that, I mean, they want it. I mean, there's, there are some programs that are struggling for players, and they don't really make cuts. We don't make cuts with our program. Unless there's a real, serious situation where we're worried about a player getting hurt or, just even way behind the curve. We have a JV program that we can use to help with that development. But, for the most part, the kids that don't want it, by the time they get to high school, you would hope that they find something like that they do want, and it is a big jump up. I mean, the high school level is not, it's a pretty solid level. It's better than people think. I mean, it's, and so a lot of kids that might play single A hockey and be the best player on their team, or even be a double A hockey player someplace, they get to high school and think, well, this is just going to be, I'm going to do great here. And they don't, because the game is faster. Maybe they haven't put the time in off the ice that they've needed to. Maybe the game's always come easy for them in terms of their skill level, and all of a sudden now they've got to really work because you've got some dogs out there playing against you. You've got kids out there that are willing to work harder than you. So in that regard, you see the sort of aha moment for some of these kids, the sort of wake up moment, like maybe I'm not going to play at Michigan State. Maybe I'm not going to play for the Buffalo Sabres. Maybe I'm not quite as good as I thought I was. And that can be difficult as a coach, to work with players through that process, and say, is this still something that you love to do? Is this something that you're passionate about? And when the kids can sort of reframe it the right way, they tend to enjoy that journey a lot better. What I find most rewarding is when I see a kid who I think is better than he thinks he is. That's the most rewarding.
Let's think about that.
That's the most rewarding part. Where you get a kid who really is maybe a late bloomer, or a kid who hasn't, had the most confidence, and all of a sudden starts to find it and starts to really blossom, and that can be a really rewarding thing. But yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I'm not dealing with a lot of kids that don't want it. Like, most of the kids in my locker room, or all of them, I would say all of them, they want it. They want it. They want more ice time. They want to be on a higher line. They want to win games. They want to be a bigger part of it. They buy into the identity, and that's a good thing when you don't have a lot of cabooses on the train that are being pulled along by everybody else. They're pushing two from the back, and that's sometimes that you don't realize. You hear about the top 5 or 6 or 7 players on each team, and they get the accolades because they score most of the goals and they get most of the press. But the real strong teams, the teams that go deep, the teams that really get it done late in the year, are the teams that have those players really from 7 to 13 or 14 that really push. They make those players better in practice, and they're good themselves. If they need to go into a key moment of the game, they can get it done. And so, I'm sort of blessed that right now we have that luxury. We have that depth.
That's good. When I was in middle school, playing middle school basketball, I remember my coach saying to me, this is not a particular player, but he's saying to me that players that have potential, he will push harder. But players that really didn't have the potential, he kind of leave alone. Not in general, maybe in a general sense. Is that a good coaching philosophy, or is that something where you should expect a great effort no matter where you are on the roster?
I would say it's not a good coaching philosophy. I would say it's sort of an old school coaching philosophy. You know, obviously the kids that play the most are going to get the most feedback, right? Because they're going to be, they have more ice time. When we do video sessions, they're the kids typically that will make a few more mistakes because, they're on the ice for, the old 80-20 rule, it applies in hockey too. 80% of the ice time probably goes to 25 or 30% of the players. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it is in a lot of really competitive sports anyway. But, I like to switch things up a lot. And sometimes my players think that like I'm playing head games with them and I like that they think that. But now they know me, and so they know that, like, I'll have, like, for instance, like I post the lineup every night on our group app. I'm constantly talking to them throughout the day. Like, I already posted video for our game for Victor for them to watch certain things that we want to watch for Thursday night. But, like I'll have kids come to practice and all of a sudden, like, they'll be on defense for a practice, or they'll be on a completely different line. And it throws them off a little bit. And I'm doing it by intention. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in practice, I'll say, so-and-so swap your jersey with so-and-so. And I really won't tell them why. I'll just let them kind of figure it out. And, I'll tell them after practice if they want to be debriefed on it. But a lot of times I'm just testing them. I'm trying to see what their body language is going to be like. I'm trying to see what their attitude is. Are they going to buy into this? Okay, let's go. I'm going to get this line going, or am I going to see the mope? Am I going to see the head hang, right? And again, this is just building life skills. But I like to change things up. We have 3 different forechecks. We have 2 different neutral zone traps that we run. We have 2 different versions of our low zone that we run. We sort of script for everything, so that if we have to make a change on the bench during the game, the kids are completely fine with it. And there's no panic. There's no, like, I'm not drawing something brand new up for them on the bench during a game.
Yeah.
So I think the more I can keep them off kilter and the more that they can come to practice thinking like, okay, well, what's it going to be today? It helps keep those kids that may not feel like I'm a key kid. It helps keep them involved because they never know. Coach just put me on the first line, or he put me on the top deep card today. He's testing me. He's seeing what I got. Because one of those kids might be in the penalty box and I might need you on the kill, right? And then you're going to jump right into that situation in the game and go, I got this. I've done this already in practice. Mm-hmm. So I think it's our job to do that. So as much as I can mix those kids in practice, we do a lot of clock games in practice and probably giving too much stuff away at this point. But where we'll like put like 5 minutes left down by 1, and put 2 different halves of the team. Okay, we're up by 1. What are we talking about? What are we doing? Well, how are we executing on the bench right now? Okay, we're down by 1. The side's down by 1. What are you doing? We're looking to stretch the ice. We're looking to get pucks to the net. Well, a lot of different things. And so we try to model lots of different situations, and it really helps us. And like the Pittsburgh game the other night, when we were up 2-1 going into the third, we talked about like, hey, we've run 1-goal mini games in practice all year. We know exactly. I didn't have to say a word to the kids. They were just chiming, hey, what we're doing. They knew. And then when we got the 2-goal lead, they knew how to handle that too. Up by 2 with 4 minutes to play. The clock is your friend now. You keep the clock moving. Pucks go deep. Everyone stays above the puck. No odd man rushes. No penalties. We block shots. Take whistles. Icings are fine. All that stuff. So they're scripted in terms of like how we're going to play in those situations. And the nice thing is that when you do that in practice, when you can simulate that game type stuff in practice, those kids 7 through 13, they get that experience. They get that experience that they wouldn't get in a game, and then mom and dad go, well, my kid's not getting any chances in the game. But he's getting the same experience in terms of like how to compete in these moments during practice. And by the way, for every minute they spend on the ice during a game, my top kids, they'll spend at least 6 minutes in practice, right? And my mid kids and the kids that don't play as much, for every minute that they get on the ice in a game, they get 12 minutes in practice. So let's really concern ourselves with that practice time, which is what I do. I mean, that's where the coaches can really control the environment is in practice. So yeah, you got to coach to those kids. To go back to what you started with, you can't just coach to the top kids or the kids that seem like they're into it or out of it. It's our job to make sure that you're into it and that you could execute. If somebody got hurt or broke a skate lace on the bench in the middle of a game and you had to jump into a situation, you would know, I'm on this wing. I've done this in practice. I know exactly what I'm doing. So that's what that's what we try to prepare for, and that's what we try to keep those guys involved.
So as a coach, has it ever been a time, you don't have a specific time, but it has been a time when you had to say that I made a mistake, like, man, I really screwed this one up. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, your players done everything you asked them to do, but you definitely dropped the ball as a coach. I mean, you don't have to say specifically, but there have to been times that has happened to you.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, you know, and I've done this for a long time now, so there's less of those things I think that occur. But I can think of a number of times where, you know, I've missed a line change, or I've left the line on the ice too long, and I should have changed them, and I didn't. And we got scored on, and so yeah, I mean, I own those. I'll walk right in the locker room and say, boys, that's on me. That's on me. And this is the other tough thing with hockey specifically, is that like the home team gets the last change, right? And so what we try to avoid is setting our kids up for failure too. Like if my third line is on the ice, or my 5-6D pair is on the ice, we don't really have a 5-6D. We kind of have 6D that I'll play. But, if my third line's on the ice, let's say, and the other team sees it and throws their first line, like we have a code word that we use, and those kids know that they're immediately supposed to get a whistle and get off the ice. And because we don't want that matchup, because I don't want to set them up for failure, right? Like I don't want to put them on the ice and then have the other team's top line score against them and have those kids come back to the bench feeling like I just blew it for the team. And so sometimes parents don't understand that too. They go, why'd you pull my kid off after 10-second shift? Well, because the other team jumped in with their top line, and I didn't want them to get scored on. In fact, it happened against Pittsford. Pittsford's one goal that they scored against us was when my third line was on the ice, and we didn't get the line change that we needed. And so it happens. And this is the game that we're playing. This is the chess game that we're playing as coaches during the game. But yeah, there's mistakes that we make in terms of it happens with the line changes and just having the wrong matchups on the ice. I've never scored a goal as a coach. I've never made a save as a coach. I've never made a giveaway as a coach, right? I've never made a great stretch pass as a coach. So it's the kids that play. But there are some times where coaches, we've got to put them in the right situation to succeed. And so those are the times where we can make mistakes, and if we're not sharp and hurt the team. So we've got to make sure that we're sharp when it comes to that. But we study the lines. We know what the lines are going into the games, 1 through 4 on most of these teams. And I got Eric Moslik. He stands right next to me as a spotter the whole game. And we even have some games where we play on the road where coaches won't take the last change, right? As soon as the whistle blows, the next line jumps right onto the ice. And even though we're the away team, I can see who they've got and throw the line that I want. So it's, it is what it is. It's from doing it for a long time. I'm not like great at it, but it's something that I think I owe my team. It's the one thing that I can do during the game, is to try to get the right personnel on the ice against the, so that we have an advantage, if we can create one.
Yeah, so. I got you. I know that, when we talk, we got a few more minutes to go. I know there's some stories you always have some type of story. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. There has to be a story that we can kind of leave in on this. So there has to be some type of inspirational story, or some type of hockey story that you have that you're always willing to share. I know you have a story up your sleeve that you can share with the audience. That's appropriate, I should say. Appropriate hockey story.
Yeah, it's the appropriate part that I'm concerned about. I don't know. I would say, I would say from this season, we had a game. Our only loss this year was the Williamsville East, and they were a good team. They were a good team. We outshot them 36-24. But our captain Joe DiRizio blew his shoulder out in the middle of the second period. And then we had a misconduct called against one of our better players who profusely apologized to the team over it. And we really circled the wagon. It was the second game of the year. And, we always go into the year with certain expectations. I don't try to set them too high. Like sometimes people come and go, we're winning the state championship. We're winning. I go, we're winning the next game. That's our goal. We're winning the next game. That's it. We're winning the next game. But we had a really cool moment, I think, in the locker room after that game where there was no panic. We were really concerned about Joe, our captain, and how long he was going to be out front. Thankfully, it was only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. But a lot of the kids, said some really cool things and took some ownership of what happened and why we lost. And there was nobody standing up in the locker room saying, well, you got to do this, or our D aren't doing this, or our forwards aren't doing this, or, why did you do that? Like, nobody was. Like, everybody that was standing up and saying something was saying something about themselves and was like, Coach, I didn't have legs today.
Mm-hmm.
I had one kid say that he was up real late the night before. I had one kid say that he thought that maybe we overlooked them a little bit. I thought it was going to be an easier game than it was. I had another kid stand up and say that he's got to be better clearing pucks. He overhandled it and got poked, and it ended up in our net. And it's like, okay. It's like, I loved all that stuff I said. I said, let's clean the locker room. Let's get out of here. We go back to work, and we play Tuesday. Mm. And I walked out of the locker room, and I said to my assistant coach, John Kirkwood, I said, we're going to win a lot of hockey games here. Because of not because of that loss, because of what just happened in that locker room. And, so, I mean, I got a million stories, but in terms of something topical, something from this season, like, that was a really cool moment that the kids sort of just bought in at that moment. Like, this isn't going to happen again. We're not going to beat ourselves. If we get beat, we're going to get beat by a good team. And that's fine. And it's going to happen. We've got good teams that we play coming out. Victor's great. Webster Schrader's great. Orchard Park is fantastic. McQuaid is excellent. Portside is, great team. I mean, Aquinas is playing so much better. It's like, we don't have an easy game the rest of the way. But, we've been able to answer the bell so far against some pretty good teams. Queensbury in their own barn and beating Grand Island and beating Pittsford in their own barn. So I think a lot of it stems back to that moment, that loss earlier in the season, where the kids took it the right way. They took the ownership and they just said, we're going to be better as individuals. And that's pretty cool as a coach. Like, when you get to witness something like that, and there's not much that I have to say. I don't have to yell at them. They know. Yeah. They know. And they've, so far it's been great. So.
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, you always have some type of introspective hockey knowledge you want to give out. That's really, really good. That's really good. All right. I mean, any, like, before we get out of here, like, any social media you want to share, anything like that?
Oh no, just your site, man. Your site. Watch those games on Roku. I love the broadcast that you guys do. The tough thing about being a coach, and having a kid that plays on another team is that I miss a lot of these games. And that's tough. It's really tough. But when I get to tune in on, your site, you guys are streaming the games. It's, it's like I'm there, and I can still talk to Luke after the game about what happened. And it's, that's been a godsend, man, because it's, it's a blessing that you're there doing what you're doing. So I'll just promote you. I just promote Phil. I'm just promoting Phil and what you do for all the parents that can't get to the games, and how important it is for us to be able to watch our kids and be a part of the process. So.
One thing everyone's, they tell me how much they appreciate it, but you don't understand how much I really, really enjoy doing it. But it's something about being able to just kind of learn as you go. There's different experiences. There's, like, we went to the Harbor Center, and I'm standing on top of the scaffolding and recording it, and able to have kind of the best internet, and just, like, being able to see different point of views of different teams and different experiences. It's really, really cool for me So when people tell me thank you, it's really cool for me because it's like I appreciate to have the opportunity to do this. So it's
Yeah.
never like I'm just doing this for my benefit, but also like you just never know. Like if you do something like this for somebody, you just don't know what kind of reciprocation come back to you. And as I'm promoting the team, maybe some kid who's looking to be, going to maybe prep school or something can use what we do and
Yeah.
be able to elevate it. So it's an opportunity to be valuable to somebody else, and you just never know what's going to happen, come back from our way. So that's what I'm really, really excited about. It's to see how the team grows, and like as I'm learning, like as I'm working, I'm doing things, I'm really busy. I'm like, I gotta get this video out, I gotta get this highlight out. It's really exciting. And then when you put the video, maybe the highlights out, and then you see people watch the videos and highlights, and then just how it grows, it's really cool. And I gotta say, I appreciate the opportunity to do it, because it's not about me, it's really about the kids. So I really appreciate
awesome.
it. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah, it's good times, man. Mark, it's nothing like, what are you gonna be at the next game?
I'm hoping next weekend. We play Victor Thursday night, and then we play Webster Schrader on Saturday at 1. So yeah, I'm hoping to be at a game here soon. But the nice thing is the youth season goes a lot longer than high school ends. So normally towards the end of the season, I can get back to quite a few of the games. But right now we're in the throes of it. So it's
all right,
it's a lot. So.
All right. Well, all right, folks. Well, that's it for us. I'm here with head coach Marc Staley of the Batavia Notre Dame high school hockey team, varsity hockey team, and I'm so happy that he can get on. It's the second time he said he wants to be the rotating guest.
Right.
He wants to break records.
I'll see you next month.
Hey, man, when we talked that one time, I was like, man, Mark, we got to get on and talk, because you started telling some things. You started having some stories. I'm like, man, we got to talk. So I'm glad you're on for the second time. So it's very
the next time we should talk about practice.
It up when you just talk about practice. We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we're talking about practice, not a game. We talking about practice.
And how practices are constructed and how they're implemented, because I think that's really important. It's something that USA Hockey doesn't do a real good job of with this ADM model, in my opinion. They do great with skill drills and stations and stuff like that, but they do a really poor job, I think, with actually teaching the hockey IQ of the game. And I've got a sort of a unique way that we're doing that with our kids out here that would be an interesting conversation for sure. So.
All right. Well, let's call that let's book that one for
okay, man.
next month. I think you said.
You got it.
All right. So
thanks,
all right,
buddy.
Folks.
Have a great day.
All right. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Coalition Corner. I am Philip Johnson once again, and we will see you next time. Bye now.
Thanks, Phil.